What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Week 11 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, is Colin Wilson. A lot of excitement in the air for this slate. Colin just opened a pack of cards and got an Emmett Moorhead. I don't know if that's a sign to... Yeah, I think it's a sign to bet Bobtac. We'll talk about that game later. But what's going on, Colin?
Cracking some Bowman Chromes, waiting to do this with you because I feel like it's going to be a little spicy. But I mean, we didn't put Colorado, Arizona up in the whole marquee matchups. Like we didn't allot a whole bunch of time for it, but I have a feeling it's going to be spicy. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're going to go. We decided that we're going to start keeping track of the head-to-heads. We'll play for a steak dinner and we'll keep track of who's some years Colin's ahead of me, some years I'm ahead of him. So I think it'll just add some fun to the podcast. But we have a lot to get to today. We'll do some look ahead or look away in just a second. We'll get to 4 marquee games. We will go through 6 more in rapid fire, have some trash, talk Friday Night Lights, favorite underdogs and overdogs. Colin's got some San Diego State overs, Arkansas. All right, we hit like 20, 25 games. So let's get right into it. Let's start with some look ahead or look away. This is where we look at last week's schedule, next week's schedule, and determine if there's any impact with a potential situational spot or how teams will handle this week's game. So let's start with Texas Tech traveling to Lawrence to take on Kansas, who's in the thick of the Big 12 race if someone slips up. Kansas, 3.5-ish point favorite. Took some money, might have been getting dummied, came back down. I personally like Texas Tech here. It's one of my favorite bets of the week, but I will admit that Texas Tech is probably one of the most difficult teams to power rate in the entire country. If you look at their body of work, you had number one, they could have started out 6-0. So they were supposed to compete for the Big 12 title. They lost to Oregon, in the final minute. They lost double overtime to Wyoming. And they had just a very unlucky start to the year. And then they had quarterback injuries. You lose Shuck, and then Morton is basically playing with a AC joint injury. He can't throw the ball downfield. That in West Virginia, I don't know why they kept him in. And then he played a couple more games hurt. But against BYU, they played their third-string quarterback, who's awful, Jake Strong. They outgained them 389 to 277, but they had 5 turnovers. Third string through 3 picks. Same thing happened with West Virginia. Bunch of turnovers, outgained them. So they're hard to really get a hold of. But I think this is the peak of the market on Kansas. Morton looked fantastic last week, actually making all the throws. He sat out a couple weeks. They say he's fully healthy now. Texas Tech's run defense has been very good. That's the foundation of everything Kansas wants to do. They're top 10 EPA run D. So, this is a huge game for Texas Tech. They get the bowl eligibility. I think that's why they brought Morton back, and luckily he did look healthy. Kansas, 2 big wins as underdogs. They have Kansas State on deck. I just think that Texas Tech will be able to move the ball. You're on the ground, through the air with a healthy Morton. I'll take anything over a field goal. Wreck them. What do you see here? Anything?
Yeah, I agree with you because all I saw last week, by the way, extra day of rest here for Texas Tech, because what they did to TCU was just explosive play after explosive. TCU couldn't stop anything. And that not too surprised with what the Horned Frogs are able to do, but Kansas kind of has a similar issue. Like they are 114th in defensive quality drives. They allow everyone to score touchdowns instead of field goals. They don't tackle very well. And I think the big question that you always look at with Kansas is, will the Texas Tech defense be fooled by the heavy motion, the guys that are the formations, all the different things that they do on offense? According to last year's game, the answer is no. It was a very comfortable win by Texas Tech. They really turned it on the second half in the fourth quarter specifically. So when you look at Joey McGuire and Lance Leipold head to head, it's obviously Texas Tech. So I think they're going to get hot here at the end of the year. You get Central Florida next week. Who knows what they can do against Texas in the end? Who knows what bowl positioning they're going to be playing for? But this is a team I think is on the rise. So I'm going to back you with Texas Tech. I agree on the dummying the number, though. It's a number that I made 3.5, but I would expect this to come down to 3. We'll see. I'll keep my eye on it. We definitely want to get the best.
Texas Tech's a buy on team. I mean, like their run offense has also been good too with quarterback injuries. Like if you look at some of their rush metrics, and they basically couldn't throw it downfield. I mean, they were playing with a third string quarterback, turning it over like 5 times a game for a couple weeks, and then they were playing with their second string Morton, who I actually really like, with a bum shoulder. So like their offensive and they were still putting up like 400 yards, but they were like just dunking it, dink and dunk, running. But now with a healthy Morton, they finally got the explosive passing aspect. They'll be able to run on Kansas. So yeah, I think that this is good buy low, sell high spot. It's time to buy the Red Raiders. Let's go to Rutgers at Iowa. Game of the weekend. Total down to 28, lowest ever between two FBS teams. Rutgers has Penn State on deck. Big sandwich spot here. They just came off that game against Ohio State where they kept settling for field goals and eventually threw a pick six. By the way, Kansas has 2 pick sixes over the last 2 weeks, so they've definitely getting a couple of bounces that they might not get this week. Iowa 1-point favorite here. I can't bet I can't bet an under 28. I make it 29. So I think it's a decent number. You just need everything to go right, but neither team gives up explosives. Neither team has explosiveness on offense. There might be 0 explosive plays in this game. And there's good big punter leg. It's gonna be bad field position. It's gonna come down to like just the pick six or who makes mistakes. Rutgers, I trust their offense to just like run it more with Wimsatt and company. I think that's probably the difference because Iowa's run D's been a little vulnerable if you look under the hood. So I'll probably throw Rutgers in a round robin. This game is. Iowa, if this game goes under, what's Iowa, Nebraska? Is it going to be 27 next week? Or in a couple, geez, what do you got here? Anything?
We're just going to keep pushing it until it finally has an over. It's going to, no one's even going to notice when Army Navy play each other and the total's like 31 because Iowa's just blowing this away every week. I do like Rutgers like you, but they have a much more methodical offense and a much higher rate and quality drives. And the way you want to attack the Iowa defense is on the ground and not through the air. Iowa's number 1 in defensive coverage. They're number 1 in limiting big plays through the air. That's not what Rutgers is going to do. So Rutgers is much more successful on the ground. But what I love is that they're 7th in havoc allowed. They don't beat themselves. A lot of teams beat themselves. We'll talk about Cincinnati later, but a lot of teams beat themselves, and Rutgers is not one of them. So I expect them to be able to run the ball, be methodical, get into scoring position. I don't know how many points are going to come out of this. I power rate it in the low 30s. But I like Rutgers here in this spot too.
All right, moving on to a game with a little more juice to it. Tennessee was Georgia next week. We'll travel to Missouri, who's coming off a game against Georgia. So you got a lot of Georgia angles here. I think it definitely works in Tennessee's favor here in that Tennessee played UConn last week. They just got off the bus, threw a couple passes and went to sleep. And then Missouri was in a battle with Georgia. Was really impressed with Missouri. It's like EPA perspective, they were better overall. Like they just red zone and turnovers. But what they got to be exhausted after that game. Tennessee's going to be much more well rested. Look, Tennessee, everything starts with their running backs, a 3-headed monster in the backfield. Missouri's run D's been really good. So that's definitely a question for Tennessee. It's like strength on strength. And then is Milton, you get good Milton. We've seen flashes of Milton. We've seen bad Milton. But I can't get behind. I show a tad bit of value on Missouri, but the spot isn't great. And Luther Burden. This is before adjusting for Luther Burden. I don't know, number one, is he going to play? And if he is, he's probably not going to be 100% healthy. And that's massive. That is changes the entire dynamic of their offense. Not only is he one of the best receivers in the country, could argue he's the best, but he draws so much attention that it opens up everything else for Weiss and Cooper. So, and I don't think Missouri will be able to get much on the ground. So if you don't have a fully healthy Burden, it changes everything with this offense. So I can't get behind Missouri. This is a pass for me. I think you like Tennessee here.
I love Tennessee here. I think Missouri emptied the chamber. I don't think they have anything left in them. And Luther Burden being hurt, I don't think that's being led on exactly how hurt he is. He plays in the slot. He's the most dynamic, best slot. You're going to see him on your NFL screens coming up in the future. But when you take him away, that allows you to double team Theo Wees and some of the guys on the outside, and that's going to be bad. I mean, Tennessee is no slack in coverage whatsoever. They're 27th in the nation. They're on target rates in the top 50. And Missouri, not only do I think that they just kind of unloaded against Georgia, not just emotionally, but physically, and they're kind of beat up. Are they the LSU of the East Division? I mean, the defense is, we said this last week, where I had a hard time. I wanted to bet them. The number said I should have bet them. I should have bet them, but their defense is so leaky outside the top 100 and finishing drives defensively. They're outside the top 100, allowing the big play, 87th in quality drives defensively. If you
on late downs,
if you can protect the quarterback and move methodically, you can beat Missouri. Sure enough, Tennessee 13th in havoc allowed. I don't see any pressure getting on Joe Milton whatsoever. Missouri's 46th in the nation in creating pressures, but Tennessee also offensive line has been fantastic at keeping him clean. So they're the 16th lowest pressures allowed so far this year. So I think there's just too many advantages from the ground game, from the pass game, and then defensively. I don't trust Missouri whatsoever. I love the team. They've already eclipsed their win total. I'll be happy to bet them when they're healthy again, especially with Luther Burden. But this is a Tennessee play all the way. I love the spot. I don't think they're overlooking it because they know they have to have this game to have that competition with Georgia.
Oh, and for what it's worth, the coach of Tennessee, how's his name? Heupel has owned Drinkwitz. Mm-hmm. His offenses, if you look over the past couple of years, just absolutely have dominated them. Let's Stanford at Oregon State. Oregon State has Washington in Corvallis next weekend. This is in Corvallis as well. Oregon State never loses in Corvallis. Oregon State's going to beat Washington next week, by the way. But we'll talk about that next week. Before that, Oregon State has to worry about a pesky Stanford team that's been a little better than a lot of people in the market expected. Oregon State laying a pretty big number here. Can they just run their way to a cover? What do you see here?
Advice for anybody that took Stanford under 3 with me, like back in May, might want to lay Stanford money line here. Like, I don't know, put $25 on it. And so, I mean, how is this team winning all these games, beating Washington State? I mean, we're going to get to them later. They're a corpse. There is nothing mathematically or statistically that says that Stanford's going to be able to hang here yet. They keep getting themselves involved in games, getting in with Washington, beating Washington State. They're overachieving. And I always say this in November. I love first-year coaches to pull off unbelievable upsets in the month of November because teams don't quit on first-year coaches. They almost never do. But mathematically, statistically, I can't make a case for Stanford. I think the number is exactly right. I make it 21, but at the same time, I mean, it's like last year, when South Carolina in November started beating teams that were asleep at the wheel. Vanderbilt started beating teams in November that were asleep at the wheel. These things just happen with these teams that just have no path. And Stanford is definitely that team. So Oregon State's definitely on overlook alert to Washington.
All right. So the only thing with Stanford is that if you look at rush success rate, the only teams that are allowing above a 50%, which is horrible, on rushing plays, UMass, Washington, Western Kentucky, San Diego State, UAB, who's the worst by far. Talk about that game later against the triple option, and Stanford. So their run D's been bad. And then you might say, look, let's talk about Washington State Cal real quick. We'll get that out of the way now. We're going to do that in rundown. You might say, oh, look, Stanford's defense last week, they shut down Washington State. So what is going on with Washington State? This offense that was so explosive early in the year, and now they can't score. This is an air raid. They wanted to be a downfield air raid. This is a RIP to the GOAT, Mike Leach. What was the kryptonite to the air raid? Drop 8.
Yep.
So all these certain teams, there are certain teams that won't do it. It's not their identity. Oregon won't drop 8. They play a lot of man. They didn't drop 8, and Washington State's offense looked great. Arizona, all they did was drop 8. UCLA just dropped 8.
Yep.
And Stanford last week just dropped 8. And Washington State, number one, they're the most pass-happy team in the country. They can't run it either. And they're starting running. They have some freshman kid in there who had like I don't know, 8 carries for like 13 carries for 30 yards last week. They can't run it. Stanford dropped 8. Washington State has no answer. They don't know what to do. They're talking about it. They're done. It's as long as you drop 8, that's all you got to figure out and Cal does that a lot anyway. They just like to prevent explosive plays. And then you can run all over Washington State because they don't have any linebackers. So that's, if you're wondering what's happening with Washington State, that's it. It's an old air raid problem. Remember the time when Mississippi State played LSU, and then on the opener, and LSU tried to play straight man? Like, remember that? And then, the next week someone was like, all right, I'm going to drop 8. The offense looks night and day, and everyone in the Pac-12 has figured out, just drop 8. Some teams won't do it, and they refuse to do it, and that's when Washington State's offense will look explosive and they'll put up a ton of points. I assume Cal's just going to drop 8 here. It's in line with what they want to do philosophically, and they should be able to run it. So Cal's the play there, right?
Oh, I'm on Cal. I'll just say on the other side of the ball, Washington State can't defend the run whatsoever. They cannot keep teams from scoring touchdowns instead of field goals. They've lost at home, to Stanford, and they made 5 straight. Jaden Ott is fully healthy right now, full strength the past 2 games against USC and Oregon. So, I mean, I'm all in against Washington State and betting on Cal this week. I mean, they just played 4 top 25 teams in a row, brutally beaten down. They were competitive in a couple of them, but I mean, when you play 4 top 25 teams in a row, it's going to affect your power rating. It's going to affect everybody's perception of what you are. But Cal has the advantages here in this game. They're not a corpse. Washington State is.
Yeah, and I fully trust that Wilcox will drop 8. That's his philosophy anyway. Take away the big play. But yeah, I mean, Washington State against teams that have dropped 8 recently, they lost 44-6 to Arizona. They lost 25-17 against UCLA, and in that game, Washington State had 11 first downs, 200 total yards. UCLA had 500 yards of offense. So like that score was misleading, and then they lost 10-7 at home to Stanford, who just dropped 8. One last one here before we get to the marquee matchups that everyone, including myself, is itching to talk about. Iowa State, Texas on deck. They come off a really deflating loss to Kansas. At BYU, Slovis will be out again. I hate this BYU team. They have a bunch of fraudulent wins. They kind of got exposed last week. They're catching 7.5 here at home. Iowa State's offense is just not efficient though. Like they have to hit some explosive plays. They're not efficient on a down-to-down basis. I don't know, but you should be able to run regardless. In BYU, their front is so bad. This is a pure stay away from me. Do you have anything here?
It is a stay away for me because I think the number is a little bit too high. I make it 7, so 8. I'm not buying on this. But how do you trust a BYU team that scored 13 points our last 2 weeks against West Virginia and Texas? The problem is Iowa State, where they're good, is the only signs of life that you have out of BYU. Like they do create explosives and standard downs. BYU's actually been pretty good at stopping that. BYU's defense is top 50 in hard stops and stopping offensive momentum and methodicals, which is where Iowa State kind of just prods along the field. They're not explosive whatsoever. So there's just the couple of things BYU does right is where Iowa State is offensively. So I'm not going to play this. I think 8 on the road and altitude with an overlook, I'm going to pass on playing Iowa State. But I mean, I think they're a player here going down the stretch because of that 3-3-5 defense and just the way that they're coached up. That's a really tough defense. The stack that doesn't react to motion, you can't get a read on them. It's a tough look as a quarterback if you've never seen it before. So I don't know. Maybe the under is the play in this game.
I don't mind the under. That would be my only look there. All right, before we get to the marquee games, as a reminder, the BBOC podcast presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's get to the marquee matchups of the day. All right, let's start. Noon Eastern on Fox. Michigan, 4.5-point favorites. Over under 45.5. Can't wait to talk about this game. I like Penn State. So before I give my reasoning,
I don't understand. I forgot my wig today.
Put my clown. I'll put my clown hair on. All right, so I'm gonna recommend Penn State. I'm 0-3 on Penn State sides this year.
Oh,
And let's go over why I like Penn State here. All right, so first of all, I will say that Michigan's a very difficult team to pinpoint just how good they are. They played essentially nobody so far. So I've talked to a couple people who I really respect who make this line 3, which is where I make it. And then I talked to people that I really respect, including you, that make it around 6, right? So, and because it comes down to like, all right, you're beating these teams so bad, but you should. And then how good are they? And you don't have really strong data points. So a lot of it's based on priors and then adjustments throughout the year, and people handle it differently when you're not playing great teams. So where are the cracks on this Michigan team? So when I look at this, number one, the offensive line is not as good as last year. Drake Nugent, excellent center. I think he's a slight downgrade from Oluwatimi at center, but he's still excellent. Zinter's still there, and he's excellent at one guard spot. Keegan's at the other guard spot, but he struggles. But the tackles are the big question. Barnhart was the weak point last year. He's still there at right tackle. Ladarius Henderson, the Arizona State transfer, has not been good. He replaced Ryan Hayes, who's now on the Dolphins. He got drafted there. Big drop-off. So the tackles aren't as good. And if you look last year, McCarthy's been great under pressure this year, but they played nobody. Last year under pressure, his numbers dropped precipitously. So what's going to happen? And by the way, because the offensive line's had a drop-off, the running game has not been as good. I mean, they haven't got a push a number of times throughout this year. They did last year against Penn State. Their run game was so much better, and Penn State spent their entire defensive line, because of that game, spent the entire offseason bulking up. So they have a lot more bulk up front. They all added like 10, 15 pounds. But this offensive line going up against an edge rush that could get back Chop Robinson, he's going to be a first-round draft pick defensive end. I think he's going to play from what I've seen and heard. That's enormous. Abdul Carter, he's a great pass rusher. Sutton and Isaac off the edge are great. I think you're going to get Vanover back as well. Tons of depth. The Michigan goes slow. You can rotate. I think they're going to get pressure on the outside. And this Michigan run game is just not there right now. It's been all McCarthy. Edwards, I don't think, is fully healthy. The offensive line isn't run blocking as well as it did last year. Drop off at the tackle spots. So, look, Penn State's secondary it's excellent. Number 1 success rate. The only blemish is Marvin Harrison getting thrown the ball a million times. No one's going to stop Marvin Harrison. Michigan doesn't have a Marvin Harrison. So I think this Penn State defense can get pressure. And this is just a big step up in class for Michigan, right? Going from playing clowns, speaking of clowns, for 9 weeks, and then going on the road in a hostile environment to play a team that's kind of in your weight class. There's going to be a shock to the system, right? Going up against these kind of athletes, and you're going to have to adjust. So, with these offensive line issues, there could be some communication issues early on. And look, McCarthy's been excellent. I have to give him credit. He's been great. The wide receivers have been great. The tight ends have been great. But I think Penn State can match up, can get pressure, and this Michigan rush offense is not going to have nowhere near the success that they had last year in this game. On the other side of the ball, what can Penn State do? I don't think either team's going to have much success running it. The Penn State tackles have been great, but the interior has been bad. Their center, Norzad, he's been bad. Wormley at guard's been bad. But Fashanu and Wallace, they've been great in pass protection on the outside. And, they can handle, I think, Harrell, Moore, Stewart, McGregor, all those pass rushers. So when I look at the tackle matchups against these great edge rushers, I think Penn State at home is going to have the edge. I don't think either team's going to run the ball. I mean, you're not going to get – Michigan has Grant, Jenkins in the middle. They just have houses, and then you're playing in front of Colson and Barrett. And Penn State hasn't been able to run up the middle anyway. I don't think either team's going to get much running. So can Penn State throw the ball? This Michigan secondary is very good. They lost a couple pros. They haven't been tested at all. I mean, look at who's the best passing offense Michigan's faced this year? Name one. UNLV.
It's bad. I mean, I'm loaded up here to talk about strength of schedule. It's bad.
Of course, Michigan, their entire secondary grades out elite. Like the UMass transfer corner, Well, of course he grades out elite. They've played. I mean, you go back to Michigan State, ECU. These offenses have been so much worse than we even thought. ECU is the worst offense in the country. So I don't know. Their secondary, I think, is vulnerable. And Penn State finally threw the ball down the field. That's what I've been asking them to do. That's what they need to do. And 10.8 at ADOT against Indiana, the biggest of the year by far. Then last week, they're throwing it down the field. Dante Cephas finally shows up. 6 catches, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, he didn't have more than 2 catches the entire season in any game. So I think that Aller's playing more confident. They're going to hit some downfield shots. I think this Michigan secondary might be a little more vulnerable than people think. I think they're going to get pressure on the other side. I think Michigan is in jeopardy of losing this game, but I make it a field goal. There's also, I don't know, this is not part of my handicap, but what is the impact of the sign stealing? What is the impact of the distractions of everything that's going on? I don't know. That could only help Penn State. Not part of my handicap, but I like the Nittany Lions here. Plus 4.5 or better. I think this sets up as close field goal game either way. I think Penn State's going to get off to a fast start, and their defensive ends and edge pressure is going to create some problems for McCarthy and company. So give me the Nittany Lions. I'll take my clown mask off, my clown hat, while you make your case for what you like.
I enjoyed seeing Manny Diaz on my Instagram today, who did a bunch of hand signals to his wrist, to fingers, all other kinds of stuff. And then he finally says, that's, by the way, everybody, that signals for get here early, get loud, be extra loud on 3rd down. Like, Manny Diaz is cracking jokes about sign stealing. I mean, no one at Penn State's ever come out and said they did this to us and they did that to us, but Michigan routed them last year and it was on the ground. And I just for 1 second have to think that Yurcich and Diaz are like, how'd they know what we were going to do? So, I mean, it's very uncharacteristic for me to see that on my Instagram, but I agree with you. I like Penn State in this game. I'm not positive I'm going to play it. Financially, I don't have any money in this on the side because I'm so invested on Penn State futures that I have to have this game. I may get into it for a unit or whatsoever, but I do like Penn State, just for the record. Now, the over is where I have money on this week. I don't expect either
team. You got to at least dabble. Come on, because we got all the shit talkers saying we can't get a Penn State game right. We both agree. You got to at least put a little money on it. Even
all right. There's good. Listen, I'll put a green dot in the app. I'll put some money on it, but I am so heavy in Penn State futures. It doesn't.
I'm with you.
It's crazy. Listen, I like the over in this game. I've got money down on the over. I with you, I don't expect either of these teams to be able to run. I think what you do when you get these teams that have these strength of schedules that are so bad, right? Like Michigan's 111th, but you see all these rankings that are top 5 and everything. I mean, it doesn't matter. Havoc, pass rush coverage, big play, quality drive. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I say. They're all top 5, but your schedule is 111th. So what do you do when you have a team and their stat sheet pulls out like that? You pick out the ones
that was Penn State's as well before going into Ohio State, right? Because they played nothing but clowns. They had the same exact profile.
Right. So what you do when you see that is you go and pick out the ones that aren't stellar and you say, well, this is actually a real problem. Because if you're not able to pull this shit off against East Carolina and UNLV, what are you going to do when a real team plays you? So when I look at the sheet, Michigan's offensively 40th in line yards, they're not going to be able to run. They're 107th in standard downs explosives. They're not going to be able to create any kind of chunk yardage play. 1st and 10, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 4. You keep going down the list. Like, I mean, there are certain holes in here. Defensively, they're 82nd in allowing explosives on standard downs. That's a problem. They're 71st in creating pressures. Really? With this schedule? Like, and that's cumulative pressures, right, on the season. So they're 93rd in broken tackles. They've allowed a healthy amount of broken tackles. There are things with this Michigan defense that really are not lining up with the perception of what this team is. I mean, you could listen to any kind of media outlet in the world, and they're going to tell you Michigan is big and beefy and bad and mean, and I don't see it. But Penn State likes.
How about the Bowling Green game? I mean, Bowling Green got pressure. McCarthy went 8 of 13, 140 yards.
Yeah,
2 touchdowns, 3 picks. They only averaged 5.5 yards per carry. The other thing is last year under pressure or with a harder schedule overall, McCarthy 1 big time throw, 7 turnover worthy plays.
I'm getting there.
And I think Penn State's going to be able to get pressure.
Yeah. Well, I do like the over here. And the reason is because Penn State, I'll start with, I'll go to the Michigan side first. The question is, can McCarthy handle one of the highest rates of blitz? Now, Manny Diaz blitz 51%. Guys, national average is like 28%. Manny Diaz is just nuts with his blitz. He's coming after McCarthy here. And if you look at the overall numbers, you're right. McCarthy was one big time throw and 93 pressure dropbacks last year. This season, he has 8 big time throws. But I mean, Stuck, we could go round and round. Is a Bowling Green pressure a little bit different than a Penn State pressure? Probably a little bit faster, a little bit more on top of you. I would say so. McCarthy this year is only seen a 10% drop in adjusted completion rate when it comes to pressured pockets. All I can do is go off that and say, I think McCarthy's going to have success when they send blitz. I'm not saying it's going to be Marvin Harrison's success, but they're going to be able to move the ball a little bit, but they're not going to be able to do it by running. You go to the other side of the ball.
They'll hit some explosives because that's the one blemish on this. If you look at the Penn State defensive profile, it's explosive because they're aggressive, right? Man, blitzing, and Michigan has some. I mean, they have some really talented tight ends, some really talented wide receivers. So they're going to hit some explosives for sure. So yeah, I agree with you there.
When you go to the other side of the ball, what is going on with Mike Yurcich in this offense? Like, why are you only attempting 15 passes over 20 yards through 7 games in Ohio State? And then the last 2 games against Indiana and Maryland, you've tried 12 passes over 20 yards. You've nearly equaled the previous 7 games in 2 games. Is that, I wondered if that was Maryland or Indiana's defenses, but you go to Mike Yurcich making comments earlier this week after a practice, and he said the efficiency just wasn't there. Now, he wasn't specific. Was it Dante Cephas? Was it Keandre Lambert-Smith? Was it Drew Aller throwing downfield? He wasn't specific about what the efficiency wasn't there for him to allow Drew Aller to throw downfield, but all of a sudden it's there, and Penn State has an appetite to throw downfield. I expect both these teams to have scoring opportunities. That doesn't mean I think that they're going to get touchdowns every time. I mean, that's the whole thing about playing totals. People are just like, this team's fast. This team scores a lot. To me, it's about scoring opportunities. I believe Penn State and Michigan will get themselves into scoring opportunities to get over this number. I make it in the low 50s. Let's go over. I'm joining you on Penn State. Shit, I'll go buy a clown wig if they lose. But I mean, I'm with you all the way. This Penn State appetite for big explosive plays could be the difference maker. Both ways, though. All right. It could backfire the other way. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the difference could be the home crowd step up for Michigan and the tackles, their weakness at tackle. Get Chop Robinson back, those edge rushers, and the Penn State tackles have been really good in pass protection. I think that's ultimately the difference. The thing that I worry about is, because I don't think either team's going to run the ball, is it small game James? Is he like this? We've seen this story before, so trusting Penn State. We'll see how it works out. But really looking forward to that game at noon. Another game at noon that I'm looking forward to, Alabama, Kentucky. Let's see, Alabama 10.5, 11-point favorite here in Lexington at noon. I like Kentucky. Anything over 10 is fine to me. Over under 47 here. So let's look at this Bama team. I know that you love them, so I'm curious to get your thoughts. You bet a national title future. Yep. First of all, this is not an ideal spot for Alabama. It's a noon kick in Lexington after
I know you're new to this. I know you're new to this. It's the Jefferson Pilot time.
Jefferson Pilot. They got their revenge, right? Big revenge over Tennessee. They wanted that game. LSU beat them last year. They wanted that game. They beat LSU. 2 big. We want these games circled on the schedule. Now you're going to Kentucky for a noon kick the week after. Major letdown spot. Kentucky basically just had a scrimmage last week against Mississippi State. Just their defense won the game. They didn't have to do anything. So what do I see when I look at this game? So number one, I think that so everyone says the Alabama offense is back. They destroyed the LSU D that was playing with all its backups. Everyone does that. Every competent offense destroys the LSU defense. I mean, like 50 plus. It doesn't matter. So I didn't take much from that game. Milroe's getting better, but he's a deep ball's elite. He can run. He still struggles to read defenses and in the intermediary throwing range. You go back. Why does this team trailing at the half to Tennessee and then explode in the second half? Why do they only beat Arkansas by 3? Why should they probably should have lost at Texas A&M? Because their offense just goes into these droughts if you have a competent defense. And they'll go 3 and out. They'll take a bunch of sacks. The offensive line, they have some holes at center and one of the tackle spots. So when I look at this game, what does Kentucky do? Their entire defensive philosophy is they run a ton of zone. And they want to take away the explosive play. I think they're 11th in explosiveness allowed, 9th in passing explosiveness allowed, and they sit in a ton of zone. So here, what does that do? You can't really hit explosives against them. I'm sure Bama will probably hit 1 or 2 because they're just so talented, but you can't really hit explosives against them, and quarterbacks can't run against them. And they've played a ton of running quarterbacks this year. None of them have done anything on the ground. You just have guys in their zones, and they have fast linebackers. So Milroe's, I think, legs and his deep ball are going to be neutralized here. Bama's going to come out flat, and they're going to have droughts on offense. So I think that this is a lower scoring game. Kentucky can hang around, and Leary's looked better. He's healthy. He got full clearance. You saw him in that Tennessee game, threw for nearly 400 yards. They had drop issues, which they've kind of cured. Their offensive line is healthier now. So I think this is just a good matchup for the Kentucky defense and a great spot. I make it like a little over a touchdown, factoring all that in. So I was happy to take 10.5. I'll say the way that I think this plays out is Kentucky's going to give Alabama a scare, and then it's going to end like Alabama 24-17, I'll call it.
Ooh, 24-17. Well, I project the game to be 8, so I will allow it. I think it's a good bet when you get double digits here because, I think the number is too high. It's perception of Alabama after they beat LSU, and now you're rolling into an 11 a.m. kickoff Central Standard Time. The one thing that I look at when I get into the numbers, this series has not gone well for Stoops against Saban since Stoops took the job back in 2013. Losses 48-7, 34-6, 63-3. But, like I say, it's pandemic season. I threw that one out. Kentucky finally broke their 3-game losing streak against Mississippi State, but they failed to meet national average in success rate and run and pass plays. They didn't generate one explosive drive. They only had one methodical. They did limit Mississippi State to a field goal. They stuffed nearly half of Cowbell's rushing attempts, which would give me hope, like with a Kentucky ticket, that they could stop Jalen Milroe from doing something here. Alabama's 33rd in offensive finishing drive, so it's going to be a little bit of a different story here in scoring position. But the question is, how often is Alabama going to get into scoring position? The way to beat Alabama is to saw off Jalen Milroe scramble game. You got to keep him within the pocket, within the passing lanes, and then somehow not have the deep ball kill you like that has. So you got to pick one or the other, which one you're going to go after. Kentucky's 130th in creating defensive pressures, 116th in broken tackles allowed. And Alabama has been top 10 nationally in creating broken tackles. So I think at some point in the second half, there's going to be a breakthrough. I don't expect it in the first half, and I don't see Devin Leary having success here. 13 of 22 passing against Mississippi State. Worse, that was worse. It's like he's regressed from the 28 from 39 against Tennessee, where we thought that he was, getting better with the injury that he had to his pec. So no real pros and cons with the coverage. Alabama dominates every package. So what I think is an extremely low scoring game in the first half because of the hangover, because of the way that Kentucky plays defense and protects explosives. This is a first half under all the way. I wouldn't be surprised if there's only 13, 17 points in the first half.
Yeah, UK 11th in overall explosiveness allowed, 8th on passing downs. That's big against Milroe. They played 5 mobile quarterbacks. They've allowed, if you take away sacks, 40 rushes for 180 yards. That's it. So they've done a good job. You could beat them with efficient passing all day. But that's not really the Alabama game. And for what it's worth, Alabama has, and because we agree it's going to be lower scoring game, that gives even more value to the double-digit dog. Over the past 3 seasons, Alabama in true road games, 4-8 against the spread, failing to cover by over a touchdown per game. As a favorite of more than a touchdown over the past 3 seasons, Alabama in home or neutral games, 13-5 against the spread, including the postseason. 72% in true road games, 3-8 against the spread as a favorite of more than a touchdown, 27% against the spread. I think the Cats keep it close and keep it ugly, which will work in their favor. All right, let's move on to the Pac-12, where Washington will try to remain unblemished against Utah. Washington, sitting around a 9.5-point favorite here. This is Utah's coming off just a complete waxing of Arizona State, which had kicked out their. Bourget got hurt. They had to go to Conover, who had no chance. They had to kick out. Arizona State had to kick out their true freshman guard to left tackle was a disaster before that game. And Utah just, I think Arizona State had 73 total yards. Utah had over 500. Complete domination. Utah's pass defense on paper is great, but I will say, I mean, they held up relatively well against Oregon, USC. They've gotten a lot of breaks elsewhere, like Arizona State's 5th string quarterback. They played Baylor's backup, right? So they have a couple data points where they were, they played Dante Moore in his first road start. Cal's true freshman in his first road start. So they've had some, performances where I think that they've been helped by the circumstances, but it's definitely a really good pass defense. The question here for me is how successful can Utah be running the ball? Washington's run, they already mentioned it earlier, over a 50% success rate allowed, but can Utah keep up that way? Can they play keep away enough? Utah hasn't been great in true road games in the Pac-12 either. Mm-hmm. I can't get a good feel for this one, but I think you like either a side or total. What do you see here?
Yeah, I pulled the rubber band back and threw a dime down on Washington. I'm not getting real positive traction in the market on it, but it's just the notes that I'm hearing, everything out of Kyle Whittingham's presser, the numbers that I'm seeing in the stats. To me, this lines up to be a Washington blowout. Now, we talked the big handicap last week against USC, which you and I were both on USC. One of the few games I think I was wrong on last week, but it was because Washington continually struggled with 2-4-5, 3-man fronts. Like we were just talking about this with Pac-12 defenses dropping 8 in coverage, and some teams were dropping 9 because Washington refused to run the ball. What did Washington do against USC? They went ape shit on the ground. Dylan Johnson went berserk, 4 rushing touchdowns, I think 250 something yards. So finally, Washington says, you know what? If you guys can take this away from Michael Penix, we're going to show you what we got on the ground. I think Kalen DeBoer is, I was talking about him being, bullheaded or just wanting to throw into coverage. It seems like they're more of a complete, offensive unit now. And if that's what Utah is going to show them, they're going to take the run. And if Utah tries to pressure Michael Penix, they're going to get the pass. So I'm more comfortable saying Washington is more of a complete offense now, not just a throwing one. And you know what? That gives some of your wide receivers like Jalen McMillan a little bit of a rest, not having to have such the workload on them. Washington back on track after struggling against Arizona State and Stanford, which showed them really light fronts. They went anti-light box, pounded it in the back. I think if Washington's going to score, they're going to go up and down the field. They're going to get their points here. Can Utah generate enough scoring opportunities and score themselves? And I think the answer is no. Kyle Whittingham came out this week, said, Jaquindon Jackson, game time decision. Ankle is hurt once again. I mean, Jackson had that one big breakout game, and after the game, he said, I'm pissed off because I'm injured every game. Well, now he's injured again. He might not even play in this. And when, that was brought up to Kyle Whittingham in his presser, he said, oh, Sione Vaki, he's only going to play a maximum 30% of snaps on offense. The rest of the time, he's going to be at his natural position in the defensive backfield, and that's where we need him this week. And I'm just thinking to myself, who's running the ball? Well, Kyle Whittingham answered that.
Jackson's banged up, right?
Yeah, Jackson's banged up. Vaki's not going to run. He named a true freshman off who I think has 5 carries on the season as the guy that's going to get the attempts in this game. So I don't mean to like treat that like that's a bad thing for Utah, right? Because Utah is the one thing where they can throw a pig farmer at quarterback, they can throw a defensive back at running back, and they can still beat teams. It's pretty crazy. I don't want to say that they're thin, right? Because they seem to come up with these no-name people that you and I don't even know about and blow teams out, but I think they are the thinnest they've been. I mean, with all the injuries from the beginning of the season till now, this is the thinnest they've ever been. And then Whittingham said at the end of the thing, we want to use a little bit more tempo. And as it relates to how many injuries that they have, they want to use a little bit more tempo, and they weren't able to do that last week. That's not the key to beating Washington. You got to be able to run the ball.
You don't want to do that as a dog either.
No, you got to run the ball. So the things, like everything that I'm seeing in the stat sheet and everything I'm hearing from Whittingham in that press conference on Tuesday, Washington's got a chance to blow them out, get some style points, and maybe slip into the top 4 here.
I won't have anything on it, but I'll be rooting for your bet, and for personal financial reasons, maybe we'll get Washington blows out Utah, Oregon State, maybe close, sleepy win. Get a 3+3 with Oregon State next week.
I mean, Oregon State's, I can't even, we could do the pod now. Oregon State's rushing attack is at Washington D. Oh boy.
Yeah, they're going to go up and down the field. USC last week. This is, if you go back and look at their I mean, this is outrageous. I mean, USC, they should have covered that. I mean, I can't believe they didn't get a back door, but they lost that game on a 4th down late, and then Caleb fumbled. That's the problem with USC. Well, we'll talk about that game in a minute. Here's the last 21 rushes for USC against Washington, D. 9, 5, 7, 10, touchdown, 7, touchdown, 11, 41, 33, touchdown, 14, 10, 14, 10, 14, 25, a 0, 11, 5. I mean, good Lord. And Marshawn Lloyd didn't even play. All right. Let's go to our final marquee game. Ole Miss at Georgia.
I'm so uncomfortable with this one. I made a pick and I'm so uncomfortable.
This is the second straight year I made a really good Ole Miss future that's our good future in the SEC. I had Tennessee last year to win the division.
You should have so many legs with that future. One loss to Bama. Like, I mean, you should just man. How hard is it for Lane? Lane brings it up everywhere. Lane is all he could talk about is like, thanks guys for pissing Saban Bama off. Thank you.
Yeah, I have the only hope for Ole Miss futures for anyone that tailed the 25-1 is Kentucky has to beat Alabama. And then Auburn has to beat Alabama. And Ole Miss has to win out. So Ole Miss has to beat Georgia.
What's that pay? 800 to 1?
More than that. So if you want to join me, just open a parlay. You'll get better odds than I did. So Ole Miss here is they lost their starting tackle to an injury in practice yesterday, which is noteworthy. Georgia 10.5-point favorite here, over under 58.5. Number one, you're gonna see a lot of quarters coverage in this game from both defenses. For what it's worth, Beck's numbers kind of dicey against quarters. And Jackson Dart's been elite against quarters coverage. But I just can't get a good. And look, you saw Georgia, the defense has taken a step back. They lost a ton of talent over the past 2 years. I was shocked that Missouri was able to run the ball on them last week. So that, is a good sign for Ole Miss to try and get Judkins going here. And it's just not the same Georgia defense. I mean, look, who have they really played? I mean, you go back to Florida, doesn't look as good now, that win. Kentucky, so like this is the best offense by far that they're going to face. And, so I think Ole Miss can have some success on the offensive side of the ball. Where I'm struggling the most is I can't really get a read for the Ole Miss defense. They're definitely improved. They're definitely worrying more about the run. Last year they would drop 8. They brought in Pete Golding. There's a lot of familiarity between these staffs too, which throws a wrench into it. But they're much better against the run. I just don't know how much better they are overall because, look, they held their own against Bama, but Bama's offense can be just, we talked about it. Like they just go into shells for long periods of time. Who else has Ole Miss really faced that you say, okay, yeah, this is a great data point? I don't really know. I don't have much confidence because the numbers are pretty good, but they played LSU and that game was, 55-49. Now LSU can score that on anybody, but Georgia Tech was moving it. The Tulane backup was moving it a bit. And then they played Arkansas when it was Dan Enos. They played Auburn, who can't throw it. They played Vandy, and then they played Texas A&M, who had injuries too, and still put up 35, although that game was about to be a blowout before a blocked field goal return. So I don't have a great feel for the Ole Miss defense. And I think the Georgia defense is vulnerable. So, and the other thing, there's a lot of familiarity. I kind of lean the overs where I make this right on. I'm at 10. The other thing that just throws a complete wrench into this game is that you're going to have Lane Kiffin going for 4th downs, which could decide the side in total. Right there. He's probably going to go for a couple 4th downs in the first half. I think that if Ole Miss has a couple drives early and they fail on 4th down and this total comes down, I might look for a live over. I just don't have a great feel for this game right now, just because I don't have confidence in my rating and or feel for this Ole Miss defense and how they'll match up here against Georgia's passing attack. I'm curious to get your thoughts here.
I have held off on Ole Miss. I wrote this game up for action. It'll be out. Actually, I think it's getting published here this afternoon. And I was heavy on the over, which I have money on, and I have dabbled in the Ole Miss side. The injury to Micah Pettis is a problem. And so, let's discuss where I'm coming at with this game. Now, Georgia overs are something that I think is my fourth week in a row on this, and it just really has to deal with something that you mentioned before. Like Carson Beck has a really high success rate and a high EPA versus cover three. He doesn't have any explosives against quarters. He's going to see both cover three and quarters here. Georgia's now fifth nationally in passing success rate. Carson Beck
Are you on the over here again?
I am on the over here. Yeah, over here. 59 being a key number, so make sure you get the best of that. It did come down, I think, to 56.5. I highly doubt this thing gets to 55. Carson Beck still accurate, 13th in on-target balls. Targets don't have to change their pace, their stride. They're getting balls straight in the numbers. That's good for them, and they have a ton of explosive weapons here. The other thing, too, that I say before I flip over the Ole Miss side, these teams are 67th and 70th in defensive finishing drives. They are allowing a lot of touchdowns when teams get down to the red zone or past the 40-yard line. They're almost averaging 4 points to opponents when they get past the 40-yard line. That kind of, well, let's flip to the Ole Miss side when they're on offense, because you're right. This Georgia front seven is not pulling it off. Brady Cook, 10 rushes for 40 yards. We think Peyton Thorne. Why are these quarterbacks and these running backs having so much success? Outside zone is killing Georgia's front seven this year. When you go and look at what Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins do, it's going to be a problem. Now, Dart, you're right. He is fantastic against quarters. Dart's 57% success rate. That's well above average. He has a positive EPA against quarters. He's also explosive against cover and one, cover three. But I mean, it's a different story with quarters. He's really good. And so the question is will quarters coverage draw more scrambles or designed runs from Dart? Because it's a cover four. They can double team the outside. It's really tough to throw into, even though Dart's good at it. But I think this generates more RPO. I mean, Peyton Thorne going 12 rushes for 92 yards when Auburn was there to play him. What's Jackson Dart going to do with Quinshon Judkins? Now, inside zone, they run a little bit of power. They both have high success rate. Georgia's only seen power on 23 rushing attempts, moderate success rate, moderate EPA. They dominate the inside zone. So I think outside zone is the way Lane is going to go, because their biggest runs this season have come off tight end and tackle, left and right. I expect Ole Miss to be in passing downs, throwing often, or running outside zone, which is going to get them chunk yardage. Just depends on what they do in scoring opportunities. But like I said, both these teams are pretty bad at defensive finishing drives, at least not up to standard. So there's going to be points put up on the board. The Micah Pettis injury is a problem because Quinshon Judkins' biggest alley of running, of yards after contact, of explosive runs, is all right off the right tackle. So my advice, I have not put a bet in on Ole Miss. I have put a bet in on the over. That doesn't affect the over because Jackson Dart, whether Micah Pettis is, he's out, he's ruled out, he's not going to be there to protect Jackson Dart. Dart is still going to be able to throw into Georgia. That quarters coverage is going to make it soft in the front. Dart will be fine. But I would say come watch us on Saturday morning, because I will have money on this one way or the other. I really want to bet Ole Miss, but the injury to Micah Pettis is really big to Quinshon Judkins and his outside zone to the right.
Yeah, Pettis broke his a foot bone at practice. He's ruled out. He started last season as a redshirt freshman, played in all 13 games, 9 starts. For what it's worth,
are they sliding someone over?
I don't know. This just came out. So
yeah, for the listeners out there, this news broke like 90 minutes ago. So we're
we'll talk about this game on the live show on Saturday too. So keep an eye on the app and then tune in to the live show 10:30 a.m. Eastern.
And take this with you in your guys' back pocket. Outside zone is killing the Georgia front seven. They are not stopping anyone off tackle.
Yeah. All right, let's get to good stuff on the marquee matchups. Let's get to some rapid fire. Let's go head to head. For our first head to head, we're going to keep track of these each season. Play for.
What are you up to? 1,000 likes on this for your little Colorado statement?
Yep, pressure's on me now. See, I called you out, so I gotta. I could eat crow. You didn't say anything. You didn't open your mouth. I'm going back to my Wildcats. So I think every year there's a team that the market can't, team or two, the top and bottom of the market of the college football landscape that the market can't catch up to. Some of them are bad, some of them are good. Kent State is the bad. They're 1-9 against the spread now. They're only cover at Arkansas. The market just can't catch up to them. You got people betting $1 million on Kent State.
$1 million.
I heard that Hard Rock will take big limits, but $1 million, you gotta be losing millions of casinos to get that down on a MAC game. I digress. But Arizona, they treated me really well. The thing that people aren't talking about is last year their offense was amazing. Like they had a really good offense, but their defense was horrifying. And then they also turned it over too much. But now with Noah Fafita, who again was amazing last week, he's been the Pac-12 freshman of the week in 4 of his 5 starts, and he's played nothing but top 20 teams. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball, they can pass protect. Their offense, I now have as a top 10 offense in the country. Their offense is, and all Fafita is, it's so well schemed too. Fafita is just Delora without turnovers. That's it. They lost to Mississippi State. Here's Arizona's losses this year. At Mississippi State, they turned it over 5 times. Fafita had 4 picks, and they still lost in overtime. They lost at USC in double overtime. And then they lost a healthy Washington team by 7. That's it. And they beat 3 ranked teams in a row. This team's rolling. Defense, like I said, now the defense is better and the special teams is better. The defense can stop the run. And why is that important? Because number one, this Colorado defense is atrocious. They're outside the top 110 in rush and pass success rate. Well, guess what? Arizona's top 10 in rush and pass success rate on offense. They want to run it. They want to throw it. Do whatever they want. Move it up and down the field. And on the other side of the ball, Arizona's run D's been really good. They got bulk up front now. They're flying around to the ball. What is Colorado made the dumbest change of the year? The only thing they did well was run their passing offense with pace with Sean Lewis. That was the only thing they did well. They had terrible D, couldn't run the ball, terrible O-line. Now, Deion names Pat Shermer, the offensive coordinator, gives him the keys. What happens? It's 70 yards through 3 quarters against Oregon State. 70 yards. Trying to run the ball, go slower, wide receiver screens. Took away the one good thing that was going for Colorado. Took it away. Arizona can shut down the run. They can get out the path. They're going to dominate the line of scrimmage here. As long as Arizona shows up, they have some red zone regression coming on D. But as long as they show up, I think they're going to beat Utah next week at home too. I'll be on them again. They've just beat 3 ranked teams in a row. I think they do though, because teams want to show up to beat Colorado. Like that's Colorado talking all the shit makes this not a bad letdown spot, in my opinion. I just think Arizona is significantly better. I'm higher on Arizona than the world. I think that they should be the college football playoff, so take that for what it's worth. Arizona, bear down, ATM. Make your case for Deion.
Are we sure that they didn't make a change at offensive coordinator again when the 4th quarter started? I mean, there was just a blitz of 2 possessions there at the end to get that cover against Oregon State. So I'm not exactly.
That's all Colorado's got going for the last 2 weeks. They've been absolutely humiliated, and they got 2 backdoor covers.
Yeah.
Luckily, Arizona will hopefully put them away.
2 backdoor covers. I expect Arizona to be up 30 here, and a backdoor cover could still come in the 4th quarter. Listen, when you look at the box score, 24 minutes of possession, only 15 rushing attempts and 43 passing attempts. Shadur's ADOT was 5.8 yards, right? I mean, I didn't see any changes in these numbers compared to all the other games. Such a heavy amount of passing happening behind the line of scrimmage, shallow.
Just like an extension of the running game.
Yeah. Travis Hunter, Dylan Edwards, Weaver Horn, they all get it. They try to create something after the catch. I didn't see a whole lot of changes when I went into the box score. I thought this was going to be more of a heavy running attack with a bunch of offensive linemen, that weigh 260 pounds are all trying to move a pile. They can't, but that's not what happened. I mean, they're still passing shallow. So not really sure how much change has happened. Plus the pace is still there. I was wrong on what they were doing. And, 2 quick drives there at the end to get the cover. Arizona I'm not trying to throw a whole bunch of cold water on Arizona. I understand what this bullet train is. I'm not trying to hop in front of it. I'm just saying, how big is this bullet train? Okay. Can we agree on that? I'm not saying they're going to lose. I'm just saying, how big is this bullet train? Arizona is 60th in tackling per PFF. But then they dropped to 76th in broken tackles allowed. That's a problem against Dylan Edwards, Weaver, and Horn. Now, Colorado continues to play every down like it's a passing down, right? I don't think there is a such thing as a standard down to these guys. There's no trust in the offensive line to open up holes. And Colorado is at least 26 in passing down success rate, something that they're in all the time. And Arizona is 102nd defensively in success rate. Again, in passing downs. I mean, Colorado is going to be able to move the ball here. I don't see a path where Colorado is just 3 and out every time. I mean, the Arizona secondary is 116th in on target allowed. You can't do that against the Colorado wide receivers, even if it's a short pass or it's a sugar goes deep. I don't know, but Colorado's going to hit their guys in stride, and they're 21st in red zone TD rate. There's going to be points put up on the board. I don't know if they're going to come in a flurry, if it's going to be the last 2 possessions. I don't know, but Colorado has a path here to move the ball and get some points up on the board. And I know this love that you have for Noah Fafita is well-deserved. I mean, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I get it, but he only has 2 big-time throws, and he has 6 turnover-worthy plays. I mean, to me, the offense is more about running back Jonah Coleman. I mean, 4.8 yards after contact since he's had to be the workhorse. I mean, he is an absolute animal. I'm not saying Colorado can stop that, but I make this number 7.5. That's what got my attention, is that this is too high. I think double digits on Colorado's last home game of the year. I just think it's way too many points. I mean, Arizona is not great at, despite what you see on the scoreboard and all these covers and the fact that they're rising up in the college football playoff ranking. They're not as good throwing the ball as the numbers make them out to be with Fafita. All right. I get it. I get it. I see it. 2 to 6 big time.
I disagree. And look, Fafita is the same as Delora. A lot of it's just a scheme. And they have 2 excellent wide receivers. McMillan's one of the best receivers in the country. They have a good tight end. Their pass blocking is amazing, and it's really well schemed. It's not a huge downfield passing attack. There's just open guys all over. The only thing that you need from Fafita, make the throws, don't force it into coverage. That's what Delora would do, right? And that's Delora. What, he had 24 picks over the past 2 seasons. Fafita has a couple turnover-worthy plays, but he doesn't force the ball. That was what was holding back Arizona's offense last year. And I think they're just going to get they're going to get a bunch of sacks. Is what I think is going to stop some Colorado drives. I just don't see Colorado doing that. I don't like that. I agree that Colorado will have success moving the ball through the air at times, and I do worry about a backdoor again. But I just think the difference between the Arizona offense and the Colorado defense versus the Colorado offense and the Arizona defense is drastic. So
I mean, I'm literally debating like 2 or 3 points here, because I would not make this bet on Arizona at 9. I think there's going to be some money hit the market. I think it is going to dip below 10 at some point, but I wouldn't make this bet at 9. I would make this bet at 9.5.
Well, I bet at 9.5. I would wait to see, because you're in the
on Colorado. I wouldn't make it at Colorado.
Yeah, I'm saying I bet Arizona minus 9.5. So
what if it lands 10?
What if it lands 10? Oh man, that'd be funny for the first head-to-head. All right, let's move on to a game. I have no clue on this game, so we'll talk about it. Miami at Florida State.
Oh,
I mean, look, here's the thing. I show value on Miami. This is like a rivalry game in Florida. You always take the dog here. Like what I took Florida against Florida State last year. No brainer. I was happy to do it. I always take the big dog in these games. But Miami, I just like, so just a raw numbers point of view. And Florida State, they have some injuries. I assume Wilson and Coleman are going to play, and they were just held out because they were playing a corpse last week.
They looked fine last week on the sidelines watching the game.
Yeah, so I assume that they're going to play. Florida State's 14-point favorite. You're probably going to have a battle in the market here, because this number is going to be all over the place. You're going to have people that just say, look, this is too many points. It's a rivalry. I make it lower. Then you're going to have people say Van Dyke is done. He's hurt. And that's why you can't play Miami, and Florida State's gonna cruise. I don't know what's wrong. I assume Van Dyke is hurt, and if that's the case, then and they're trotting him out there, you can't play Miami. And then also the other thing is, like, Florida State is so good at their peaks, and they go into these they go into like hibernation mode for entire halves. They've done it so many times this year. They've been very inconsistent. So I don't know, but Van Dyke against NC State was 21 of 38 for 170 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 picks. The week before against Virginia, we're not talking about the 85 Bears. 20 of 30, 160 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. He has no touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he's thrown it for, 350 total yards on 70 attempts over the past 2 weeks. I mean, he's either hurt or he just woke up and someone took all of his talent and sent it to Tucson and gave it to Arizona for another boost. But so I can't I just can't back Miami after seeing what I've seen from Van Dyke over the past 2 weeks. If I had a healthy Van Dyke here, 2 touchdowns, please give it to me. That's what do you see here?
It's the over for me. I think it's two things going on with TVD, Tyler Van Dyne, which he trademarked. I think one is that he's had that finger injury. He's had some nicks and bruises. The other one too, if you go into it, they don't change their route tree. They're running the same passes they were running week 1, week 2, week 3. I mean, it's just not a creative offense whatsoever. So that makes it pretty easy to jump routes and take things back. Last week, pretty bad, right? I mean, Tony White's 3-3-5 is really tough to go up against, no matter if you're changing route trees or changing plays, what doesn't matter. So now you're going to get a Florida State team that smoked them 45-3 and smoked Pitt last week, did about the same against Wake 2 weeks ago. Ever since the Duke cover, I think Florida State reminds me of Bobby Bowden mode, right? It's like college football playoff rankings come out. We got to smoke everybody by 50 points. So I don't think
kind of like the over too. And I've heard,
yeah.
I've got some of my sharper friends that are hit the over too. But aren't you concerned that just Van Dyke is they're just gonna be able to do nothing?
Give me 14. Yeah, I am. But if you can give me 14 points out of Miami, I think we're getting the over here, over 51. So I don't think we need a lot out of Miami. I don't trust Florida State to shut them out. I mean, Miami, I think Miami can get 13 to 17 points here, but I just would not be surprised to see Florida State throw 45 plus up here. Maybe the play for me is a team total over and not have to worry about Miami. Because I mean, I actually, you know what? I'm gonna bet it. You can go ahead and preview the next game. I'm betting.
Yeah, then you don't have to
Florida
worry
State
about
team total over. Yeah, then I don't have to worry about Miami.
Yeah. And then if Miami's offense is good, you'd probably get there anyway, right? And then you'll have a bigger shootout. But if it's not, you can still get there regardless. Yeah, I can't get there with not knowing what. By the way, Cristobal lost them another game last week. 4th and goal. They're going to take the lead in the 4th quarter. They run up to the 1-yard line. They are in hurry up. They hand it off. It's going to be a clear first down. Read option. Cristobal called timeout, even though the defense wasn't set. Calls timeout. 4th and goal at the 1. NC State then comes out, sets their D. What did Cristobal call the timeout for? To run it again up the middle, and they got stuffed, and the game was over. I mean, how many games is this guy going to cost Miami? It's unbelievable. USC, Oregon. I mean, Oregon's laying over 2 touchdowns here. Look, this is the thing with Oregon should run wild all day, do whatever they want, like everyone does against USC. The USC's offense should have success. They can run it, throw it against pretty much anybody. But Oregon's defense is better than Washington. It's not going to be as easy. But here's the thing and the hardest thing about when you bet USC is Caleb Williams has to do so much because the offensive line isn't as great. The wide receivers aren't as great as they were last year. He has to do so much to keep up. And a lot of times, because the offensive line isn't as good, he's scrambling all around, right? He's got to have the ball in harm's way. If there's one fumble, or God forbid 2 or 3, then you lose by 40, like Notre Dame. One fumble, the other team scores 7 right away, and then you're down 2 possessions, right? Like the margins for USC are so thin because they never get any stops. I don't know how they get stops here. I can't lay over 14.5 though against that USC offense because the back door here, I mean, is so wide open. The other factor that I don't really know what to expect. Alex Grinch got fired for USC. Can they really change much in a week? I don't know. Does the defense play more inspired? Because a lot of what USC's, their scheme is awful. They don't adjust. But a lot of it's just like the careless tackling and one of the worst tackling teams I've ever seen in my life. Do they come out like more fired up now that Grinch is gone and just tackle better, just from a basic football perspective? I don't know. It's very hard to quantify changes like that in 1 week. How bad was Grinch? This stay away from me. Total 73, 2 of the highest scoring teams in the country. I think the 2 highest scoring. Do you have anything in USC, Oregon?
I took the under. I know that sounds crazy. I took it at 74, got down to 73, it rocketed back up to 75.5 today.
Godspeed.
Might hit it again. So the new USC interim DCs, there's 2 of them, both said this week, we're not going to change anything schematically. We are simply looking for a spark. Like, come on, man. Come on. You're looking for a spark at this point in the season. No Pac-12 futures, no national title futures. Like things are just going downhill so fast. You got Caleb. Who knows where Caleb's at emotionally? We'll get to that side of the ball, but you're looking for a spark. Listen, I think Bo Nix is winning the Heisman. I think Oregon's going to be in the college football playoff. If you played the Pac-12 championship game right now, I would make it Oregon -4 over Washington. Lo and behold, I went out and looked at the look-ahead line. It's 6. I'm shocked. Oregon -6. And you know what? They're probably going to cover that. Oregon is an absolute freight train right now. I expect Dan Lanning to put up a very healthy amount of points. But think about this. Oregon is playing great defense right now. No one's talking about it because it's Bo Nix season, Bo Nix Heisman season. We got any drops there for Bo Nix. The defense is being overlooked. The Ducks are top 20 in the nation in 3-and-outs. They're top 20 in the nation in drives less than 25 yards. They're top 20 in the nation in drives that don't get past the 50-yard line. When you switch over to the Trojans defense, it's all like bottom 20. So Oregon's going to get whatever they want, whenever they want. You think that the easy bet is going to be to take them to cover the spread. But what happens if Lanning wants to run the ball exclusively? Looks like Bucky Irving's going to play, right? What if he wants to take the load off of Bo Nix after he gets his numbers? What happens if they're up 28 and they want to slow it down? What happens if he wants to go for it on 4th and 1 at the 33 and they don't convert, which they should? To me, this is an underplay all the way. I see Bo getting his numbers. I don't believe in the Oregon. I don't believe in the USC offense getting their number of yards based on what Oregon has done on defense so far this year. Oregon has allowed only 26 red zone trips all season. They rank 18th in opponent touchdown percentage. You hired Dan Lanning, the defensive coordinator of Georgia, to bring in a stout defense and do what Georgia does. They're getting there with Pac-12 talent, but nobody's talking about it because Bo Nix is going to win the Heisman and Oregon's going to be in the playoff. I'm taking the under here. You know what? Let it go back up to 75.5. I'm going to take it again. I'll probably take it on Saturday as the best bet.
Godspeed. One final one here. I'll move the Big 12. I have the Big 12 game later in a segment. App State at Georgia State. App State can't defend the run. Georgia State, they run it. That's what they want to do. Is it the handicap that simple, right?
I've taken ULM and Southern Miss on Saturday's live show as a best bet against App State. I hate App State. Number 1 rush explosives in the nation with Marcus Carroll, Georgia State. He has 40 runs of at least 10 yards. Quarterback Darren Granger, who is his running mate there with the RPO, 640 yards on the ground. 576 of that is a designed run. App State, terrible. Every single defensive rushing metric you can think of. Bottom 10 stuff rate, bottom 20 broken tackles allowed. It's so bad. Like, this is not the same App State team. So Georgia State, please rush, explosives, Granger, Carroll. Let's go.
All right, good stuff there. Let's move on to some trash. All right, I'll start with, and then I'll get your thoughts.
Which one of these teams is the trash? When you put this up there, I was like, which one of these teams are you considering to be the trash?
All right, well, we're going to start Vatek. BC's not trash. They went over the win total. They are bowl eligible. Vatek. I'm buying low on Vatek here. They got drummed by Louisville 34-3 last week. But before that, they were trending up with Jones at quarterback. 3-1 in ACC play. They only lost to Florida State. Against teams in their same weight class, they scored 38, 30, and 38. Won each of them by 17 plus. They should be motivated here. BC, maybe a little bit of a letdown. Clinched bowl. And look, they've won 5 straight overall, but here's who they beat. The corpse of Syracuse in a last-minute touchdown. Army on a last-minute touchdown. Virginia on a last-minute touchdown. UConn by a touchdown. And then wildly unpredictable, odd week, Georgia Tech. Odd number game, Georgia Tech, who stinks. So the 4 of those teams are really bad teams, all by 1 possession. They've been getting really lucky. They also beat Holy Cross by 3 at home. They easily could be 3-6 on the season. So, look, Castellanos going to get a lot with his legs, but their running back room is banged up. Drones can get a lot with his legs. Drones will just make a couple more throws. Vatek's D, by their secondary has been great. The top 10 in EPA per pass, and success rate. So Vatek, buy low spot here, motivated to get to a bowl. BC maybe a little letdown. They've been getting lucky, close games. I'll buy low here on Vatek.
Yeah, you can make a case for that, and I'll probably join you on this. My one worry is that Virginia Tech is so poor in defensive finishing drives, 114th, but lo and behold, Boston College, not too great in the red zone themselves. So it's not that big of a worry as it was when I took Virginia Tech a couple other times this year. So yeah, join you.
For what it's worth, conference road teams that failed to cover in their previous game by over 3 touchdowns speaks to kind of the buy low nature. Next week, 70, 46, and 3. 60.3% the following week, covering by about over 4 points per game. Next trash. So we got one agreement there. Let's go. Fuck my life. Let's go Purdue against Minnesota.
Not too scared, are you, after what happened 2 weeks ago?
No, I mean, look, Purdue's played a top 5 schedule per my numbers. They've played, their schedule's been ridiculous. Minnesota's played a much easier schedule. The Minnesota offense stinks. They stink. Calic Mattis against man coverage has been horrendous. That's all Purdue runs. And look, this Purdue team, they've had a ton of injuries, but Minnesota's secondary is vulnerable. This is also just a terrible spot. Like, Minnesota's coming off that heartbreaking loss. They have Ohio State on deck. This is Purdue's basically their season. They have 2 clowns on deck. They're not going to a bowl. Ruin Minnesota's season. And for what it's worth, Ryan Walters, while he was at Illinois, completely owned PJ Fleck's offense. I think Purdue gets this done.
Yeah, I agree with you. Havoc going to play a big factor here, and you have to be able to defend the run a little bit since Minnesota loves to run it so much. And Purdue actually has some really decent defensive rush numbers and the 5th strength of schedule in the nation.
Yeah, their biggest blemish on run D, and their defense line held up against Michigan last week. Their only blemish is against running quarterbacks. Don't have that here. Right. So let's go. This one I really like. I don't mind this one. San Jose State, around a pick, -1 against Fresno State. Coming off of a bye, they've turned their season around. 3 straight dominant wins after a 1-5 start. They also had a hard schedule early in the season. They played USC and Oregon State. And this Fresno State team, haven't been that impressed. Yeah, they covered last week. They got a kick return for a touchdown. They broke a run late. They got a kick return touchdown on the last play of the first half, by the way. But here's their wins. They have 5 one-possession wins over Boise, probably should have lost, Eastern Washington, Purdue, Utah State, and UNLV. Not exactly murder's row. You want to know who else they beat? Kent State, Nevada, and an Arizona State team that was down to their 7th-string quarterback and had 8 turnovers. I have their strength of schedule ranked outside the top 100. San Jose State, much tougher schedule. Started, like I said, USC, Oregon State. They also lost their 2 best defensive linemen in program history, probably, Boko and Cade Hall. They lost their 2 best receivers. Lost a lot from last year's team. Took them a while to get going. Bye, even more important now. Can work out some kinks. They got some momentum, playing for bowl eligibility in a rivalry game here. And their run D is still really bad because they lost Hall and Foco, but for Fresno State, very pass heavy, not really efficient running the ball. So I like San Jose State here. Brent Brennan, their head coach, 19-11 against the spread as an underdog in league play, 63%. I think San Jose State pulls this off against Fresno.
I'm going to pass on this one. I don't see enough in the San Jose State defense to be able to stop that heavy, vaunted, scary Mikey Keene passing attack. No, I mean, I don't think Fresno can, definitely not an endorsement of Fresno. I just don't see enough in the San Jose State defense.
Let's go.
This one's gross.
Let's go Wake Forest against NC State. Number one, this spot. I mean, look, NC State coming off 2 massive, massive wins to get to bowl eligibility. They beat Clemson and then they beat Miami. Already talked about that game against Miami last week. Miami number one, Van Dyke looked awful and they vomited 4th and goal with a chance to win that game. So look, Clemson, they beat Clemson. They were outgained 364-202. +2 in turnovers. They had a pick 6. Clemson turned it over on the game time potential drive. Miami outgained NC State 292-231. 4 turnovers with an injured quarterback. Everything broke NC State's way the past 2 games. Wake Forest, great at defending the run. Top 25 national EPA per rush allowed. NC State can't throw it with Brennan Armstrong at quarterback. And that's what it's going to be because MJ Morris is leaving the program or redshirting. So I don't know what's going on from that perspective. I have it about a 1.5 point downgrade to Armstrong. You got to remember how anemic this NC State offense was early in the season with Armstrong at the helm. Wake Forest, extra day to prepare, playing for bowl eligibility. They won't get much on the ground, but Griffiths found a little bit of rhythm last week. Ugly game here. Ugly. Should be low scoring. I think Clawson will have his team ready. Letdown spot here for NC State. Give me the Demon Deeks.
Yo, you missed the biggest handicap of the game, which is whether Steve Smith is going to call NC State a basketball school, right? Interestingly enough, out of the last 10 years, with the exception of maybe one iteration, the home team always wins this game. So I don't know, if I can shed my hard-earned money on Wake Forest. It'd be tough. Feel like it goes against everything I've said this year. But
throw them in a round robin.
Yeah, we'll throw. You know what? Let's do that. We'll throw them in the round robin. I'll put them out there.
For what it's worth, Dave Clawson, 51-38-1 against the spread as an underdog. Very good as a dog, and he's very good. He's a good motivator. Very good off of a loss. As a dog, off of a loss, 30-18 against the spread, 62.5%. He's the fourth most profitable coach in that spot among 500 coaches over the past 20 years. Last one. This one I'll probably throw in a round robin. I don't know if I'll bet it, but I just wanted your thoughts. If you had any thoughts on this game, UAB at Navy, hilarious matchup. I want to bet the over, but I hate Service Academy overs. UAB is the worst run defense in the country. They are allowing 56% of rush plays to grade successful. That's the worst. San Diego State's the second worst at 53. They are dead last or second worst in stuff rate. It's either them or UMass. I don't. Navy's just going to be able to run 5 yards every play. Navy against UAB's pass attack is a poverty pass defense. I don't know how they get stops. So I want to play this over. I'm just afraid that Navy will have an 8-minute drive and then fumble or something, and then it's dead. So Navy definitely going to be in my round robin. They should score every possession and then just control the clock. But who's going to get a stop in this game? Do you have anything here?
Let me see what the total is.
54.
All right. God, I make the total 49. I want to take the over here. You are spot on with the analysis. Looking at the numbers is just a joke. I mean, the numbers are a joke. And you know what you missed out on is that
UAB 133 rush success rate, 133 EPA per rush allowed.
And not only that against the rush, UAB is 132nd in defensive quality drives. Everybody gets to have a methodical drive down the field. UAB bottom 10 in defensive finishing drives. Everybody gets a touchdown when they come on down. I don't know. Why are we hesitating on the over here? Because it's Navy?
Let's bet it.
All right. We're betting it. I'm betting it.
All right. And yeah, that'll do it. So trash, Navy over, Navy in the round robin. Wake, you agree? Wake in a round robin.
Yep.
San Jose State, you're staying away. Purdue,
yes.
And Valtech, you agree with?
Yes.
All right. Before we get to 3 and out, we got a couple of Collins teams are on the docket. San Diego State overs. Been hot on these. You did take a loss last time, but just because the game went to overtime. Mm-hmm. Or did it stay under? It still stayed under, I think, in that game. Or I don't know. You've been hot on them regardless. San Diego State at Colorado State. Colorado State 3.5 point favorite here.
Yeah.
Over or under?
Over, and that's too many points. San Diego State should be getting it here. They're going to be able to create and cash scoring opportunities. They're going to be able to move the ball in standard downs. This Colorado State defense is really poor in so many different areas. San Diego State has a running back, Lucky Sutton. He has created quite an impact the last few games since he's taken over. 4.1 yards after contact, 7.8 yards per carry against Utah State on 11 attempts last week. Colorado State is well below national average in defensive success rate against the inside zone, counter, and man blocking schemes that San Diego State runs. Not sure San Diego State's defense is going to be able to do anything. It's Fowler and Nicosi.
But their run D is so bad, and Colorado State doesn't run it, so that helps them here.
Yeah. So I'm going over. I'm going SDSU here.
And then Arkansas. Arkansas is going to be in my spots piece. I was going to play them post Dan Enos, 2.5 point favorites at home against Auburn. Their defense has been good. They can slow down this one-dimensional Auburn attack. I also like the under. The over's taking money. I get it because Arkansas was using pace last week.
Yep.
But I can't bet Arkansas because they lost their top tight end and their top receiver. Like, who are they going to throw to? That's what's concerning to me against a really good Auburn secondary. What do you see here? Help me out.
Well, when it comes down to it, I mean, in crunch time, they're just going to have KJ and Rocket Sanders lower their head and try to bowl people over. I mean, that was what got them to win against Florida last week. So we'll see what they have. But you're right, with Kenny Guyton calling plays, they want KJ to try to spread it out on quick slants. Any of the crossers are now a part of the route tree. They're back again from the Bryles era. So we'll see how they do there. I'm just so hesitant in this game. I understand the spot, and yeah, we're at home, and we've got to have this to get to bowl season. But there's a few things in this that really have kept me off playing Arkansas. First, number one, there's a huge coaching mismatch here. I love Sam Pittman more than anything, but the number one middle eight team in the country is Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. So this number that's sitting at 2.5, 2, it's going to go to pick whatever. I think it's going to fluctuate during the game. I really do. I think this is a live betting game. Hugh Freeze is one of the best head coaches. He's going to be completely prepared on defense for what Arkansas wants to do on offense, especially with the losses from a target perspective. They're going to be able to load the box, try to do what they can against KJ, which is tough, about impossible. But it's the same thing again, like I said last week. Austin Armstrong, defensive coordinator for Florida, I said he would make adjustments in halftime. They would shut Arkansas down in the third quarter. They did. What they allow? I think 3 points. I'm not even sure if they allowed a point. I think there was a field goal maybe that Cam Little got in on, but the same thing's happening here. Hugh Freeze is such a mastermind in game. Nobody is better from drive to drive than Auburn. So it's a coaching mismatch, which leads me to say I'm staying off this game. I'm going to play it live. Now, for those of you out there that have the Auburn win total over 6.5, you have to have this game. And I've got so much on that Auburn win total over that I'm going to get limited in live play. So I'm probably going to take a few live shots during the game. During the app, you're going to see me take Auburn on one side. You'll see me take Arkansas on the other. I'm going to try to hedge both sides. But if you're in the same boat as I am and you are so heavily invested in this Auburn over, you've got to get money on Arkansas as plus whatever. It doesn't matter if it's +1. It doesn't matter if it's plus 100 on the money line. If you've got all that down on Auburn over 6.5 for a win total, you got to get down on Arkansas here just to cover your bets up. So that's the way I'm going to play it. It's a really hard game because you're right. It's a spot for Arkansas, but there's a big coaching mismatch here and Arkansas lost pieces.
Yep. All right. Good stuff there. Before we get out of here, let's go 3 and out. All right. First down, little Friday night lights. North Texas at SMU and Wyoming at UNLV. UNLV's been a covering machine. I got nothing there. I will say North Texas at SMU. North Texas, I don't know why they started Stone Earl. Chandler Rogers has been amazing. What happens in every North Texas game is they go down a bunch and they come storming back and they get into the game. Their offense is good. Their defense is bad. SMU is pulling their starters really early when they go up big. They have, Memphis next week, which is going to decide if they go to the conference championship game or not. Preston Stone was pulled in like the second quarter against Tulsa when they put up all those points. So I show a little bit of value in North Texas, but I'm going to wait for them to go down here, and then I'm going to bet them live. You got anything on Friday night?
Well, no, I like North Texas too. And you and I cut a podcast like first week of August, and we talked about North Texas. And I said, I love Chandler Rogers. And you're like, he's not the starter. I was like, what in the world are they doing? Why is he not the starter? So I don't know why. I agree.
Their numbers are shocking. Stone Earl started 2 games. He has like 4 picks and 4 touchdowns. Rogers has started the rest, and he has like 24 touchdowns and 3 picks.
Yeah. I mean, shocking. So yeah, I do like North Texas too. I'm going to join you. I am having a hard time fading UNLV with how explosive the go-go offense has been. The Barry Odom drop 8. They've been very good. I love Wyoming, but it's not at home. They don't have Laradice as their advantage. So I'm staying off on that game. I do want to bet Wyoming. I don't know if I can make it there. So just check the app, but I definitely with you on North Texas.
All right, moving on to second down, our favorite overdog. We're 60% of these in here, but we've split 6 straight weeks. So hopefully we can bring the brooms back up. I'll kick things off. Bear down. Going with Arizona. Head-to-head with Colin here. Talked about this earlier. I think their offense will be too much for Colorado. They'll get a few negative plays on sacks and stop Colorado enough. And hopefully there's no backdoor here, as we've seen with Colorado the past 2 weeks. Colin, where are you going for your favorite?
Oh, I can't believe I'm doing this and you're not. Air Force is going out to the island on Veterans Day to play Hawaii. Troy Calhoun was talking this week about how great it is when they go out to the island. He mentioned December 7th, 1941. He mentioned all the military bases, how well Air Force is treated when they get there, how it is such a big trip for the program. It shows in the results. They have absolutely ran Hawaii out of the building the last couple of times. 114-33 combined score in the 2015-2019. Those two games, Troy Calhoun went down to the island, absolutely ran Hawaii out of their own building. I think it's important. Yes, there were 6 turnovers against Army last week. It's just so bad. I mean, that is so uncharacteristic. This Air Force team is 10th in havoc allowed. They do not do that. I mean, Zach Larrier, 3 fumbles, 2 of them lost at quarterback. All Troy Calhoun had to say was, we will fix it. We will fix it. So I don't know. I think Larrier may have he might not get as many carries. It might be a lot of fullback dive, and that is exactly where you're going to beat Hawaii. I know Hawaii looks like they might have some sort of rush defense because it's like 30th and stuff, right? But if you go and look at that, it all comes against inside zone. That's not what Air Force runs. Air Force runs fullback dive. They run power. They run triple. When's the last time Hawaii saw triple? They never have in the Timmy Chang era. So, and plus, when I was talking about some of those run concepts, pull lead is where your offensive linemen are moving around, which Air Force does a lot of. Hawaii's defense has a 25% success rate. If you don't know the numbers, that's half of what the national average is, a 25% success rate against pull lead run concepts. Air Force can run them out of the building again for the 3rd time in Troy Calhoun's career, taking Air Force down to the island.
All right, there it is, Arizona and Air Force. And let's close things out with our favorite moneyline underdog. I'm going to go with UCF here at home against Oklahoma State. I think this is a great spot. UCF, Oklahoma State's been rolling. They're coming off that emotional win in the final bedlam over Oklahoma. And UCF, I think, is undervalued in the market because they had to play with Plumlee for a while. They lost by, 2 to they blew that game to Baylor when they were up by 25. They lost by 2 at Oklahoma. Plumlee's legs, I think, are going to be the difference here. UCF's run D is not great, which scares me a bit, but the Oklahoma State defense, you want to talk about a team that's getting lucky. I mean, they've won 5 in a row. You know what their opponents have gone on 4th down? 1 for 12. You know what their turnover margin has been? +8, 13-5 turnover edge. They've also benefited from multiple defensive scores, so many short fields. You know, that highly questionable pass interference call when they would have been pinned in their own territory, probably lost to Oklahoma. Regression looms. Flat spot in the bounce house. Yeah, we're going with UCF here. You have any thoughts on that game?
UCF has some serious issues with inside zone, outside zone on the run D. But at the same time, they can score themselves. So how much can Ollie Gordon keep this up? That's the question, right? But the numbers are just not there from a Central Florida rush defensive perspective, but they can make this a shootout. So I think that's what the numbers are telling us on the board. For me, I'm going to stick in the state of Florida. So I'm going to take a team that is in the Conference USA. I'm going to take Florida International. They have to win 2 of their final 3 to make it to a bowl. Yeah, I know this is gross, but you know what? Double-digit underdogs, I'm taking them to win outright. People are just not even thinking about this team. They're going up against a Middle Tennessee team that let Stuckey down. They have 2 wins, can't make it to a bowl. Rick Stockstill, I don't know where this team is right now, but Florida International has to have this game. They've made a change at quarterback to Grayson James versus Keon Jenkins. That makes them a lot less volatile on the offensive side of the ball. It did find them a spark. He threw for 200 yards in relief of Jenkins in their last game, which seems forever ago because Florida International is on a bye. Yeah, I posted on Twitter earlier today that Action Labs, if you do some research back to 2005s, 91-55 against the spread. Teams off a bye, underdogs off a bye in November, going up against teams that aren't off a bye and on a losing streak. I mean, it's just, this is not a good spot for Middle Tennessee whatsoever. Florida International has to have this game. There are some advantages here about how the quickness and the speed that Florida International has. They just have to stop having turnovers, and going to Grayson James and not Keon Jenkins is a big part of that. So giddy up. Florida International double-digit underdog. Let's go. It's a great spot. It's such a great spot.
Well, we're going to the state of Florida for our moneyline underdog. I don't hate it at all. By the way, just reading something. The $1 million bet on Kent State A team that has one cover all year. It was the guy who won a $1.3 million parlay, this crazy parlay the day before. And he put it all on Kent State. Like he couldn't even wait till the next day. Jesus. He just put it all on Kent State.
Parlay, and you threw it down on Kent State.
Yeah. The worst team in college football that can't cover any week. I mean, come on, guys.
They're the lowest power rated team in our power ratings. And it's actually
one cover. They only can cover it against Dan Enos. That's it.
Can we get Darren down to interview this guy? I just want to hear the psychology behind this.
Oh, he's like, oh, let me get, I got $1 million. Let me get $2 million real quick by betting on this Kent State wagon. All right. All right. Good stuff there. Thanks, Colin, as always, for joining me. Thanks most importantly to all of you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Leave a review. 5-star review. We'll do giveaways on Sunday. Don't forget about the voicemail, 959-BAD-BEAT. It's always in my Twitter profile. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe, like button. We'll be back Sunday night, Monday morning with the recap and week 12 look ahead. Can't believe we're already here. So let's have a weekend. Colin, duplicate your success from last weekend. But we'll be back with a recap. Then Tuesday, we'll have the new BCS. We'll talk more Maction. Midweek Maction's back. And then the group of 5 guys, make sure you check them out. Their episode's out every Wednesday. And then Colin will be back. Colin and I will be back with the week 12 betting preview late Thursday next week. And don't forget about the live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, live on YouTube and in the app. We'll tweet out a link. But thanks for tuning in. Subscribe. You know the drill. Thanks to our sponsor, BetMGM. Thanks to our producers on the back end. Good luck this weekend. Enjoy all of your wagers. And we will catch y'all later. Cheers.
Peace out.